Alright folks, welcome back. So today I'm going to be making a very simple workbench for my lathe, and recently a company called Evolution sent me their circular saw to try out, and I thought this would be a great project to see what it can do. Out of the box, they're pretty simple to put together. The tools required to assemble it are included within the saw. The saw itself is pretty simple, but what's great about these are actually the blades, which I'll show more on later on in the video. To get started, I'm going to cut a few 2x4s to an ideal height. This can be whatever works best for you. Ideally, you want something about waist high. For me, that's 36 inches. To help with the cuts, I definitely recommend using a speed square to make sure the cuts are as straight as possible. All you need to do is line up the square, hold it in place, and use it as a guide to cut on. Do this 4 times, making sure to be as consistent as possible with the lengths, and then all the legs for the workbench are complete. Now we can move on to the rest of the cuts using the same method as before. For the length of the workbench, I'm going to be making it 36 inches long as well, so I'll need 4 more cuts at that length. And then after that, you'll need 8 more cuts at 19 to 20 inches each. These will be the cross members. You'll also need a work surface top. I'm using 3/4 inch plywood. You can also get these cut at the store if you don't have room for a full sheet, because for this project you'll only need 24 inches by 36 inches. So here's how I'm laying out the 2x4 sections. You don't need a clamp, but it helps keep together while you pre-drill the holes before driving in a 2.5 inch screw. Make sure the drill bit you're using is slightly smaller than the screw so the wood doesn't split either. Next up are the legs. They'll attach to the sides like this. I'm using one screw on the outside and then the other screw on the inside. Once you have the top section done and attached, you can slide on the bottom section, and I'm using other 2x4s just to space it up off the ground just slightly. And I'm going to attach them the same way I did the other section, one screw on the outside and then one on the inside. Next up are the other 4 cross members. This is going to add a little bit more rigidity. These are just going to go on the inside of the top and the bottom sections. And make sure you mark where you'd like the holes to go so you don't drill them right into the other screws. And then once the top 2 are in place, I'm going to flip it over and do the same for the bottom. Next up, I'm going to attach the work surface to the top. Pre-drill the holes, I'm also using a countersink bit so the head of the screw can sink into the plywood without cracking or breaking the actual surface of the plywood. You'll notice there's an overhang as well. I'll show you why in a little bit. To make sure this doesn't go anywhere, I'm going to be using 3 screws in the back and 3 more in the front. Now since I didn't cut this to the right size, I'm going to trim off the end. You can do this freehand or clamp down a guide for the saw to follow, or you just nail a board to the surface of it, whatever works. And to give it a nice finish, make it last a little bit longer, I'm going to cover it with some paint. And then after that, I'm going to sand the surface and cover it with a coat of polyurethane. And if you want to go the extra mile, since I have an overhang in the front, I thought it'd be a nice place to hang some of my lathe tools on a few nails. Having an overhang like this will make sure nothing gets coated in paints or finishes or sawdust or anything that could damage the top of these tools. Alright, so to wrap this up, this only took a couple hours to make. Definitely something you can knock out on the weekend and have a place to do your work. If you have any questions at all, let me know in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. But as I promised earlier, up next, I'm going to be cutting a bunch of stuff with the Evolution blade. Now, I already have the miter saw, which is actually the exact same blade as a circular saw, so I'm going to use that since it's a little safer. Up first is a board with a bunch of nails in it. It was pretty effortless to cut through that. Next up, I'm going to try a copper pipe. And just as before, it is insanely simple to cut through this stuff. This is PVC. Again, very simple stuff for this saw. Did not slow down one bit. But next up is the steel tube. This is where I had my doubts because honestly, I didn't think it could do it. You can tell the motor slowed down just slightly. I'm speeding up this cut. I wasn't sure how fast I can go because as I would press it, you can hear the motor slow down just slightly, but the blade, not a problem at all. It throws off a little bit of sparks, mainly just cool shavings. I was wearing gloves just in case, but this thing doesn't generate any heat after the cut, so you can pick it up, use it, whatever you want. Very good stuff. Highly recommend the blade. But thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.